and his whole family are already listening to him with loathing, do not believe even a pennyworth of it, and What is up, everybody? Jeff C. back with another book review, and today we are talking about Notes from Underground, Fyodor Dostoyevsky, Alvin, Simon, Fyodor, I don't know. Why do I have two copies of this book? Well, because I have this copy. I started reading it, and this book is in two sections. And the first section is just this monologue of this unnamed narrator just going off on humanity and why it sucks and the folly of man and all that stuff. And he says some really cool stuff in there, but boy, I couldn't get through it. And I'll explain in a little bit some of the things that I was trying to do that made it harder for me to get through the first read of this book. And so I stopped it. It's literally a 40-page monologue in this font. And so I just said, you know what, let me just put this down for now, and I'll try it again later. That was probably about 7-8 months ago, I don't know. And then I finally picked it back up and made it through, and I'm really glad I did. And boy, it is getting windy as hell out here. Really, the reason I bought this edition here, this Everyman's Library edition, is just because I know that I wanted to stick to the Richard Pevere and Larissa Volokhonsky translations of Dostoyevsky as I read more of his works. They are a married couple who apparently they're pretty good. I believe Russian was their original language, and so through sources that I trust, it is stated that their translations are the closest you're going to get to the original, even if that means that they showcase the harshness of the original. Whereas some people, I think there's somebody named like Garnett, who their works are stated to have be a little more accessible. Maybe they make it a little more flowery, the way they word it, so more people can read it. I don't necessarily need flowery. However, that does not dismiss the possibility of me in the future reading some of those translations also, just to maybe make it easier to get through. Now, I think the biggest mistake I made the first time I went through this is, as I read the first part, I just tried to blaze through it, And there's something about me that I've known all my life, but it doesn't matter the subject. Like, even if it's something, I kind of said this during the pandemic a lot, where you just kind of get tired of seeing the same stuff over and over. Even if you just know, it's like, yeah, we get it. The news is what it is about the thing that's being talked about. And, I used to say back then, it was like, man, I love pizza, right? Obviously, I love pizza. But if everywhere I looked, there was just stuff about pizza, signs about pizza, and the news is talking about pizza, I'd just be like, okay, enough. I don't need to keep hearing about it. I don't know. I like variety. Who knows? So, that being said, this guy's rant, after a few pages, I was like, yeah, bro, I get it. I figure I got what you're trying to say. And I was like, okay, so I gotta read so many more pages of this. And it's not only that I got it, but it's like negative, which I get it. There's negative shit that happens in this world, but Jesus Christ, bro, this is just what you focus on? Quickly, the reason why I did this, it's dumb. It's just me wanting to, I honestly just like the way this looks. And as I go through Dostoyevsky's work, I just want to see of this kind of, on my bookshelf. I like uniformity on the bookshelf, and I just want to see it. So I said, you know what? This is the first book. I'm going to grab this one. Everyone I buy from now on will probably be the Everyman's Library version, if I can find it. If not, then I'll do something else. But that's it. I don't know. We're only alive once, so do what you're going to do, and that's the end of that, right? The thing that I did that made it easier or made it possible for me to get to is, you see how this first section almost has like chapters, right? Sometimes, literally, I would just read one chapter. I would read a chapter and I would stop. Whereas before, I just would go right through it. And so this time, I would read the little section or chapter, be like, what is he saying? What is he doing? And I can directly attribute this to having read How to Read a Book by Mortimer Adler. I did a video on that. You can check it out. So just taking the pause. Even if I read multiple chapters in a sitting, I would still stop at everyone and be like, all right, what did this dude just say? What is he trying to communicate? And I get it. And I've said it before, and I'll probably say it a billion times, hopefully, depending on how many videos I'm able to make while I'm here. I am very much a journey person, not a destination person when it comes to reading. So I don't care if the ending of the book sucks. As long as there's some good nuggets along the way, I loved it. I'm good. And so that, yeah, the overall feel of this is like the narrator's kind of I'm not a fan of them. Not somebody I would particularly hang out with. But the book was good, and there's really some cool stuff contained within these pages. I'm going to read something here. I only had put a couple of annotations. I didn't annotate this version at all. That was another thing from How to Read a Book. The first time you read a book, I was like, just read it. Don't stop. You can stop, but don't annotate it. Just read it through as fast as you can while comprehending. So I did stop and say, what am I reading? What did the guy try to communicate to me? But even when I read some, I was like, that's a cool paragraph or a cool group of sentences. I just kept going. I said, I'll read it again someday and I'll annotate. But I do want to share one thing that I did annotate here. And this is in the first part of Notes from Underground. It's this little paragraph, so I'm just going to read this real quick. And when I read it, I was like, oh my flipping God. I've met this person that he's describing here a billion times. Sorry if it looks different now. My phone literally just got caught in the wind and fell over. I thought maybe having it situated laterally with the wind that it would be all right. But anyway, so I'm going to have to hold this again. So let me read this real quick. I ask you, gentlemen, listen sometime to the moaning of an educated man of the 19th century who is suffering from a toothache. Say, on the second or third day of his ailment, when he's beginning to moan, not as he did on the first day, that is, not simply because he has a toothache, not like some coarse peasant, but like a man touched by development and European civilization, like a man who has renounced his soil and popular roots, as they say nowadays. His moans somehow turn bad, nastily wicked, and continue for whole days and nights. Yet he himself knows that his moans will be of no use to him. He knows better than anyone that he is only straining and exasperating himself and others in vain. He knows that even the public before whom he is exerting himself and his whole family are already listening to him with loathing, do not believe even a pennyworth of it, and understand in themselves that he could moan differently, more simply, without roulades and flourishes, and that it's just from spite and craftiness that he is playing around like that. Dog, how many people you know that like they got a problem, but they like you telling me the problem and I offer the solution, but you don't want the solution. You just want to be heard and you just want to vent, and you just want to moan, but you don't want to do anything about the problem. Over 200 years ago, this dude was writing about that, and I know people are probably talking about that thousands of years ago, but I really liked that paragraph. So there's definitely some awesome stuff in here. You know what, and I forgot to, this, speaking of when it was written, so Fyodor Dostoyevsky was born in 1821, so 205 years ago. There was a mock execution. The other thing I like about this Everyman's edition, there's like a chronological order of events in his life. So he was set to be executed. He wrote to the Tsar, and the Tsar commuted his execution, sentenced him to exile in a work camp. And so after that is when he wrote a lot of his most popular works, Brothers Karamazov and all that. So that was in 1849. Notes from Underground was published in 1864. And then he passed away at the age of 60 in 1881. And it says in here, due to a lung hemorrhage. Ouch. Yeah, so part one, I finally was able to make it through just by little pieces at a time. You know, the old saying, how do you eat an entire elephant by yourself? One bite at a time. And so I was really happy. I have seen online where people have recommended, they say, read this part two. There's more like dialogue, and it's actually the narrator dealing with other people, you know, and they have dialogue. And so some people said, you know, I've seen where they're like, you could try reading part two, then read part one to get an idea of where he's coming from and why he does the things in part two. And then, you know, you can read part two again or whatever. So made it through part one. I was really happy when I finally got through it. I was like, all right, man, I felt like I had completed like some sort of training block or something. Now in part two, you know, there's an archetype of, I don't know, the phrase like useless genius, you know, would come to mind, where it's like you're too smart for your own good. It's like you're very book smart, but you have no street smarts and no common sense. That is the narrator of this book to a T. He does things in here that are just like, man, it just makes you so frustrated. You know, like he goes and meets some old friends from school, and they're just having their own conversation, and he goes into the conversation uninvited. And they're mentioning that they're going to go see a friend off the next day, you know, have dinner with him before he goes off to boarding school or somewhere, wherever he's going. And he just like, oh, I'm coming too. And they're like, bro, who the hell invited your ass? Nobody, we barely even like you, you know? And so, you know, it's like, all right, of course, there's a girl that he has a relation with, I'll just put it that way. And, you know, he tries to like make her fall in love with him versus just letting love happen naturally, which is the best way to let it happen. And she even gives him a chance, and he screws that up because he's such a dumbass. Anyway, yeah, it's just like, you know, it made me think of like The Stranger by Albert Camus, where it's just like, again, the guy who's too smart for his own good. And so you're just like, dude, you know, but what do you do? It takes all types to make the world, and those folks exist here just like we do. So it's a nice case study. I love the writing. Obviously, you know, there's a reason that we're still talking about Fyodor Dostoyevsky hundreds of years after his death. And so, do I think this could be a place where you could start your journey with this author? Probably. I think a lot of people I've seen online also say that. And when I say a lot of people, I mean like people who have gone to college and majored in literature, you know, and that there's a few folks that I follow online who, you know, they provide like the breakdown of what the different translators and stuff are known for. Oh, that was somebody emptying some stuff into a dumpster. But yeah, so Notes from Underground, Dostoyevsky is my first full Dostoyevsky read. What do I read next by him? I don't know. You know, I don't know if I'll go straight to the big perms out there, the Brothers Karamazov and all that stuff, or I don't know. There's the Notes from a Dead House, I think is what it's called, that he kind of wrote about his experiences in the work camps. So I might read that. That one's kind of appealing again also, and I'm being honest, it's because that's not a huge book. So I might check that out. That'll be next. What Dostoyevsky have you read? Let me know in the comments below what you think I should read next. I am reading a couple of really cool books now. I have another book review I need to do pretty soon after this one on nonfiction work. And so, yeah, I appreciate everybody who's watching the videos. Please like, subscribe. Follow me on Goodreads, on Instagram. It's the same title everywhere. Jeff C. based in books. And yeah, that'll do it for this video, guys. And I will see you in the next one. Peace.